Hello, everybody. Welcome back to the Don J MMA podcast. Consistency is, they say, delivered by. Consistency is a quality of greatness. I don't know whether you agree with that, Don Dada, but we're back 2 days later. So we're going to keep trying to upload these consistently. We've got a lot to talk about in the MMA space. We've got UFC Paris coming up this weekend. We've got a good card there, a really good main event, which is unlike UFC fight nights. Um, we've got Daniel Cormier bashing John Jones literally today on Kamaru Usman's podcast. I thought I'd jump straight into that and get your thoughts on it, Don. Daniel Cormier was basically hitting the idea that John Jones can ever be LeBron James or Michael Jordan or Ronaldo of MMA. He can't possibly be the GOAT because of the PED tests and stuff like that. I'll get my opinion on it in a second, but what's your thoughts on that?
DC's always going to be salty towards John Jones, let's be honest. And he's
Yeah.
got every right to be as well. I mean, just look at what that guy put him through. Left broke ran in the octagon, not once, but twice. But I do think it is a fair point to make anyway. I mean, the fact of John Jones's PED usage. But like I say time and time again when I'm talking about my GOAT list, not point for point list, GOAT list and all that stuff, is that you would miss out half of the greatest fighters because every elite level fighter has used at least something. That's just my theory is they have used some type of performance enhancer. Every top elite guy. The only one I would maybe say that hasn't is Demetrius Johnson. Anderson Silva was caught. John Jones was caught. All these top level guys end up popping for something. But Daniel Cormier, like I said, has every right to be a bit salty towards John Jones. Now, would you compare John Jones to like a Michael Jordan? Would he ever be as big as him? Probably not. But in terms of the MMA, like sport, the whole sport of MMA, he kind of is the Michael Jordan of it, in my opinion. Anyway, he is clearly the greatest of all time.
Yeah, I have to agree with you in the sense that I think if you take into account John Jones's failed PED tests, that's absolutely fine. I share the same opinion as Don Dada. Now, me and Don, well, I'll admit I'm not a PED expert, but I
Me
see
neither.
a lot of PED experts online and I've watched the videos. I live on a planet known as Earth where people do absolutely anything to get an advantage, to get an edge over their opponents. Kamaru Usman is someone I use as a massive example. He had a lot of acne well into his 30s on his back. That's a sign of PEDs. One punch knockout power, as well as 5 round endless cardio, never having to breathe through his mouth,
Yeah.
while having basically zero body fat on his body. I mean, look, Kamaru Usman is still a phenomenal fighter. This is just as an example. If I took what Kamaru Usman takes or what John Jones took in the second Daniel Cormier fight, I still would never be able to reach the levels John Jones, Daniel Cormier, Demetrius Johnson, GSP have reached. Of course, PEDs don't just carry you, it's talent, it's hard work. But I live in the real world. And that's why, to me, I never really take anything away from John Jones's career because I'm well aware that the real all-time greats in sports that can do outrageous things, usually it's because it's unnatural. That's just my opinion, and I'm basing that opinions off evidence and things I've seen online, and I'll always kind of carry that opinion. I've been in gyms where I've certain trainers have trained. I won't mention names, but certain fighters, and there's been rumors that back in the day said certain fighters were taking certain things. So this is the real world, as Nate Diaz said. Everybody's on steroids.
Yeah.
Me personally, I don't read too much into it, but I'm aware that it's there. And if Daniel Cormier thinks that John Jones can't be ranked because he got caught with PEDs and it taints his career, that's fine. And that is a very, Dondada, that is something a lot of fans use and talk about when they discredit John Jones's career. And yes, he did do that to himself, but in my opinion, I live in the real world, man. And look, it, these guys do these things.
Yeah, that is just it really at the end of the day. If you were gonna look at guys who have been on PEDs and disclude them from your GOAT list, you'd maybe have like who Artem Lobov as your goat. You know, these top guys are all on something. Just John Jones was one of the unlucky ones to get caught, not once, not twice, like three, four times. This guy was
Yeah.
unfortunately the one to get caught. Look at Bilal Muhammad, for example. He's another guy. I think there's something. I think his piss would melt the cup. I think he's on something. But these guys are
Yeah.
able to hide.
I
I mean,
mean,
I think it was your man Derek from More Plates, More Dates was speaking about it, and you know maybe it wasn't him, but it was someone saying like if you have this amount of money, you can get the best doctors that will be able to hide the fact that you're on this shit. So you know this thing
yeah, I
happens.
mean, yeah, 100%. Like, and also, like Derek from More Plates, More Dates said, before, for example, TJ Dillashaw, the only reason TJ Dillashaw was caught doing EPO is because they tested him for EPO. A lot of the times, testing agencies don't test fighters for EPO, which can only be caught through blood samples. It
Yeah,
can't be caught from urine samples and stuff like that. So when people say to me, well, Kamaru Usman was never caught for EPO, probably because they were never fucking testing him for EPO. Do you know what I mean? They were probably
yeah,
testing him for basic steroids and PEDs in urine tests. Like people need to understand, testing isn't. They don't go through your blood. They don't go through your hair follicles and your urine. Most of the time, they just get a urine test. Did it come back clean? Yeah, okay, there we go. Send it off. Boom, you've passed. I just think, look, my opinion on it again is just a lot of fighters do it. Maybe not all of them, but especially some of the all-time greats, some of the things they've been able to do. It looks unnatural, probably for a good reason.
yeah, exactly. I think we've rounded that off perfectly, to be honest. But again, like I said, Daniel Cormier is always going to be salty towards John Jones. They've probably got one of the most heated rivalries of all time. Daniel Cormier is never going to be the guy that you want to ask, is John Jones the number two? Let's be honest.
No,
But in other
yeah,
news, in fight news, Peter Yan, Davidson Figueiredo, a fight that the fans have wanted for years now, is finally happening. It is main event in UFC Fight Night China, which I thought was pretty weird that they're not going to have Wei Lee on that card. But anyway,
yeah.
nonetheless, can't complain. We have got a mega fight in the bantamweight division. Who have you got?
Yeah, so my opinion on it is Piotr Jan's title run starts again now. No, I love Piotr Jan. I think he's a tremendous fighter. I love how well-rounded he is. But on the flip side, I think Davison Figueiredo's someone that is kind of going under the radar for everything he did at flyweight, for all the knockouts he's had, for the fact that he knocked down Chito Vera for the first time in his
Yeah,
career at bantamweight, which shows that his power is clearly carrying into the sport where people like Sean O'Malley are cracking Cheeto with flush knees to the head, as Cheeto moves into it and he's barely moving. I think the power is going to be a big problem for Piotr Jan. But ultimately, this fight is going to be a great fight between two guys that can wrestle, that can grapple defensively, that can box, that can kick. This is going to be a really, really good fight. What I will say is I'm slightly worried for Piotr Jan because he is such a slow starter. He kind of tried to start a bit quicker against Song Yudong in his last fight, and I thought that was a real close competitive fight. I did
yeah.
give it to Piotr Jan. He put on a really, really good performance, and he was a little bit rusty coming off a layoff. So hopefully Piotr Jan can keep being active. I am expecting a Piotr Jan win here. I think he's just a little bit more intelligent than Davison Figueiredo is. I think we're going to see a good showcase of mixed martial arts either way.
Yeah, I mean, the fact that this is a five rounder benefits Peter Yan massively, in my opinion.
Yeah.
I think this guy is a classic 5 round fighter. I mean, whenever you see him at his best, it is over 5 rounds. The way the guy makes reads. Yes, like you said, he is a slow starter, but I don't think that will be an issue in here against Davison Figueiredo. I feel like the fact that he will have 5 rounds will see the best Peter Yan. Figueiredo is extremely well rounded though. Great striker, great grappler, but and he does have the power to shut the lights off as well. But in my opinion, he won't be able to take down Peter Yan, and he just won't be able to keep up with him on the feet. I feel like Yan will be able to outbox him for all 5 rounds, and I think he wins by a comfortable decision. To be honest.
Yeah, I think with Piotr Jan and Davison Figueiredo, I think the power is going to be a big problem for Piotr in the sense that, look, he has been hit in his career. Sean O'Malley was probably one of the only people to really rock him and really put him in serious danger. Um, but even in that fight, I thought Piotr Jan clearly won. I thought Piotr Jan clearly won that fight 3 rounds to 0. That's probably, I don't know if that's a controversial
Against
opinion.
Sean O'Malley.
Pardon?
You think he won all 3 rounds against O'Malley?
I did, yeah. I gave him all
I
3 rounds.
haven't rewatched the fight back, but I remember watching it live. I had Jan winning that fight.
Yeah, I think that's a classic example. People say close fights aren't robberies. In my mind, Piotr Jan clearly beat Sean O'Malley. I think Sean O'Malley did well in the fight. He rocked him. He landed some good shots, but I don't think the rounds were particular. I think each round had a clear win for Piotr Jan, and I gave it 3 rounds to 0 for him. I think there's always been this sort of narrative around Jan that he's in decline. And it couldn't be further from the truth. He looked excellent against Song Yudong, who is a murderer. He looked really good against Sean O'Malley, who's a very good fighter. And people called him Wash because he lost to Marab. Look, Marab is the world champion right now. You know what I'm trying to say? Marab Dvalishvili, and it wasn't that Piotr Jan wasn't defending his 50 odd takedowns that he shot in the fight. He was defending them all basically in the fight. He just got overwhelmed on the feet by volume. If those two were to fight again, I could see a world where it goes kind of differently. So I think although there's a real threat from Davis and Figueiredo in this fight, I think people need to realise Piotr Jan isn't washed. He's not going anywhere, and I still think he looks great, and he will look great again on fight night.
Yeah, I can't wait to see this fight, to be honest. I mean, there was a point in time where people were wanting Figgy to move up to become double champ when Jan was bantamweight champion. So this has been a fight that has been in the works and a fight that everybody has wanted to see for quite some time now. I do think Jan
Yeah,
will win by decision. I think the first 2 rounds will be very competitive. I wouldn't be surprised if Jan does get hurt, maybe in the early
yeah,
opening rounds against Figueredo. And if Figgy can
yeah.
get Jan down, he is very dangerous looking for submissions. But like I said, the boxing of Jan is just he's just way superior on the feet than what Figueredo is in my opinion, especially in the boxing range. Figgy isn't great with his kicks, and yeah, I just think on the feet it will predominantly be in boxing range, and that's just Jan's element. But one thing to consider: Jan's coming back off an injury. Will that play a factor?
Yeah, I mean, it's like we said. It's the theory that maybe Piotr Jan is sort of starting to decline, just because of his injuries, because of his inactivity. He did look rusty against Song Yudong, but I still think he looked great. So I think it's a talking point going into the fight. We don't necessarily know for sure how he's going to look, but I personally think he should beat Davison Figueiredo in quite a competitive fight. By no means am I saying that this is going to be a wash. Like you said, I could see a world where Yang gets rocked in the fight by like an overhand right or something like that, which Figueiredo's really good with. But like you said, another talking point in this fight, I actually want to bring up to you is Figueiredo. Oh, at flyweight, he had not a soft chin, but it started to look like it was wavering a little bit, especially in the Brandon Moreno fights. He is getting a bit older now. He doesn't really have time to waste in getting back to being a
Yeah.
champion. He's trying to stay active and justifiably so. Would you say, Don, that Davison Figueiredo's competition has been anything near at bantamweight the level of Piotr Jan? And is it are we maybe overestimating Cheeto in this fight?
Yeah, I mean,
Cheeto.
Figueredo, yeah. No, well, with Figgy being a bantamweight, talking about his chin, that was a problem with flyweight. But one of the big problems was his cardio. Now we have seen him now in the bantamweight division, and cardio doesn't really seem to be that big of an issue as it was when he
Yeah,
was competing in flyweight. Obviously, we will get to see this more over the space of this 5 round fight against Jan. He has been more active, in my opinion. His last few fights, it's really hard to compare, really, because who has Jan's last fights been against? Song Yudong, Marab, and Aljo, wasn't? Were they his
yeah.
last three?
And Sean O'Malley, yeah.
Sean O'Malley, yeah. So, I mean, Cheeto Vera, his last wins are against Rob Font, Cody Garbrandt, and Cheeto Vera. I don't know. It's a really close fight. I think people might be looking too much into the wins, to be honest, and looking too much into the fact that Yan is coming off so many losses, and then he got that win over Song Yudong. I think people might be looking into that too much, and maybe treating the Cheeto Vera win as a better win than what it was. Don't get me wrong. I think Cheeto has overachieved in his career. No offense to the guy. I think the positions he's got himself in, skill wise, I think like majority of the ranked bantamweights beat him, to be honest. But
Yeah.
activity wise, you would have to go for Figueiredo in this one. And I mean, you could compare this to the likes of Anthony Joshua, Daniel Dubois. Daniel Dubois was more active, fighting the more high leveled guys than what Anthony Joshua was. And look what happened in that fight. That was a big factor in there. But for me, I just think styles make fights. Jan, stylistically, is a horrible matchup for Davidson Figueiredo. And the fact that it's 5 rounds really has solidified, in my opinion, that Jan is going to get the job done.
Yeah, I think the fact whenever you have a 5 round Piotr Yan fight, you just see round by round, he gets more used to it, he gets more technical, and he starts to figure you out, except the Merab fight. And of course, the Aljamain Sterling 2 fight, which was quite close. It's
It
just
was
Aljo.
close.
Yeah, it was very close. And the Sean O'Malley fight again, I think he clearly won. So Piotr Yan, 3 rounds, Piotr Yan, 5 rounds especially. He's a very intelligent fighter. And sometimes, Davison Figueiredo's really athletic, he's really powerful, he's got a lot of skill. But Piotr Yan has very high IQ. And Figueiredo at times, whether it's at flyweight in particular, has been caught being over aggressive, being unintelligent, maybe coming in with the same attacks over and over again, loading up the right overhand. So I think these are things that Piotr Yan can definitely capitalise on. And once he finds a way to counter the power of Figueiredo, I think he'll find his way to win. I think this is going to be a great fight. So is it just to clarify, Don, you're going with a Piotr Yan win?
Yeah, I'm going for Jan by decision, but this right here will be an interesting matchup as well to see how good Davison Figueiredo actually is as a grappler. Because in my opinion,
Yeah,
he can
100%.
knock Jan out. He has the power to do so, but in my opinion, his key to victory here is to out grapple Piotr Jan. So it will be interesting to see just how good of a grappler Davison Figueiredo really is in there. Does he have the control? Will he be able to control Jan on the ground like Aljo done? Who knows? It'll be interesting to see. But for me, over 5 rounds, I'm taking Jan decision.
Yeah, for sure. I agree with you. I have Piotr Jan to win that fight. Moving on, we've got UFC Paris coming up this weekend. So we have got a pretty good co-main and a pretty good main event. Obviously,
Yep.
the big talking point is going to be Renato Moicano versus Benoit Saint Denis. Just quickly go with that fight, Don. What's your thoughts on it? 5 rounds. Renato Moicano, is he elite? We're going to find out that question this weekend, surely.
Yeah, this is going to be a tough one, to be honest. I could see a world where Money Moicano does get the job done, but I just think looking at it, Benoit Saint Denis, it's in his hometown. The guy's gonna have some like a real chip on his shoulder, something to prove here after that Poirier loss. I feel like he is gonna go out there and look to make a statement win. And we have seen Moicano get hurt time and time again on the feet, and he wears damage. Like he wears damage. When you hit that guy, he starts to swell up. He starts to cut badly. We've seen Jalen Turner hurt him with a body shot. I don't know if it was a punch or a kick. I think it might have been a body kick. And Benoit Saint Denis throws brutal body kicks. I can't see a world that if Moicano can just tough it out um, and get into the later stages of the fight, I do feel like his grappling might come into play then. I think Benoit Saint Denis might start to gas out a bit. Obviously, we did see him gas out in the Dustin Poirier fight, but that was the main reason for that was staff, let's be honest. But I feel like Benoit Saint Denis is going to march forward in here and quite literally kick the shit out of Money Moicano and TKO him inside 2 rounds.
Yeah, I think with the Moicano Benoit Saint Denis fight, you sort of alluded to it. The staph infection. Look, Dustin Poirier fans. I'm a Dustin Poirier fan myself. It can't be denied. Benoit Saint Denis was probably rushing a finish because he had staph infection, and it was on his head. Was it on his head?
Yeah,
Was it on his head?
yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah, on his. You know what I'm trying to say? So, and he was probably on antibiotics. He looked significantly slowed down in the second round too. Don't get me wrong. By no means am I claiming Benoit Saint Denis is a perfect mixed martial artist. He does get over aggressive. He does leave himself very squared up. And I think if he does try and over pressure Moicano and rush the finish, I think from there Moicano can definitely get the takedowns. I do believe Moicano's a better grappler than him. But I think Benoit Saint Denis is strong enough and good enough to get up from these positions. And we saw against Jalen Turner, Moicano isn't necessarily the most active grappler. You know, he kind of does get you down and he kind of does look for an opportunity. But if he can sit there in half guard and you're not doing anything, he's fine and more than happy to do that. So I think in the Jalen Turner fight too, it was bittersweet because I think we all know that if Jalen Turner had followed up when he dropped Moicano with some ground and pound, Moicano, the hype would be dead. He would have lost by knockout, but he didn't. Like you said, Moicano got hurt really badly in that fight. He wears damage. We all love Moicano. I like him. He seems like a good person. He's a very good content creator. But I think this is going to be a really hard fight for him. Saint Denis coming off a massive, massive knockout loss, and maybe Don Saint Denis's durability has decreased too. You know, he's been knocked out by Dustin Poirier, and it was quite brutal. So has that affected him? Is he coming back a bit too soon, Don? Do we think?
I don't know. I mean, I feel like obviously Poirier is definitely one of the more heavy-handed guys in the lightweight division, but I feel like he kept getting hurt, and you could tell. Well, in my opinion, anyway, he was getting caught because he was just so like he put everything. He emptied the gas tank in round one. Like he really
Yeah.
went for it, and he was visibly drained by the second round. Now that could just be a thing with Benoit Saint Denis that he might just not have the cardio to go 5 rounds. I mean, the guy is a very fast-paced fighter. Fast-paced. He throws a lot of heavy shots as well in there. So maybe he just can't fight a 5 round fight like that. But I don't think Moicano doesn't have the power of a Dustin Poirier. He doesn't have the boxing of a Dustin Poirier. Yes, he is pretty decent at striking, but the main thing that Benoit Saint Denis needs to watch out for is his grappling in here. I do feel like if Moicano is able to get Benoit Saint Denis down, I could see a world where Benoit Saint Denis does struggle to get up from Money Moicano, especially in the later rounds, because Moicano showed Jalen Turner, yes, he might not be the best at getting up off his back, but Moicano showed that he can control you on that mat and you can't go anywhere if he so pleases. And I feel like that could happen maybe in this fight here. But again, I think Benoit Saint Denis marches this guy down, pins him against the cage, rips the body shots, and folds Money Moicano like a deck chair in the second round.
Yeah, man, I think Benoit Saint Denis with the Paris crowd is really going to put it on
Yeah,
Renato Moicano. I think he's going to maybe force a panic shoot out of him too quite early. I think on the feet, like you said, Dustin Poirier, although it's a talking point, maybe Benoit Saint Denis is coming back a bit soon after being knocked out. It was brutal, but Dustin Poirier is probably one of the most heavy-handed lightweights ever of all
yeah.
time. Getting cracked by him with your chin in the air, swinging wild shots is only ever going to go one way. Whether you're Max Holloway or whoever it is, you can't just be wild against Dustin Poirier. Ask Michael Chandler, he'll tell you. So, um, Dustin Poirier is one of the most heavy-handed guys in the division. I don't think Renato Moicano has the most power on the feet to trouble Saint Denis, and I feel like getting the respect out of Saint Denis for your power isn't really going to be the way Renato Moicano wins. He's not going to win the boxing exchanges. He's not going to do well if they end up in the clinch and Saint Denis is landing knees, landing elbows. I think he needs to get the respect out of Saint Denis by shooting very quickly and potentially making this a boring fight, doing what you've got to do to get the win. But ultimately, I do think Benoit Saint Denis will get quite a phenomenal performance here. I think he will knock out Renato Moicano, maybe with like a head kick, similar to how he did with Favola. I love Renato Moicano. Just don't think this fight's going to go well for him, Dom.
No, I'm saying body kick, crumples him against the cage in the second round, couple ground and pound shots. Money Moicano is out of there. Even if he does lose to Benoit St. Denis, I still feel like the Paddy Pimblett fight's there. And I feel,
That's an awesome fight.
yeah, and I even feel like if he does beat Benoit St. Denis, I feel like he should be looking on the bigger and better opponents than Paddy Pimblett, if that makes sense, with a win. I feel like he should be looking for the likes of Dan Hooker or Justin Gaethje or calling out those guys instead of then going back down the way to fight Paddy Pimblett. But I can understand why Paddy Pimblett stylistically would be a good matchup for Moicano. Plus, it's a massive fight, one of the biggest fights you can get in the division.
Yeah, man. Paddy Pimblett's an interesting one because I think the Moicano fight definitely dies down if he loses to Saint Denis. I think Paddy Pimblett wants someone that's going to officially break him into like the top eight, you know.
Yeah,
And if Saint Denis was to win, I don't mind seeing a Pimblett fight for someone just for. I know Saint Denis will want to go up, but the problem with that right now is I don't think Dan Hooker will fight him because I think Dan Hooker wants. He'll want a Poirier, he'll want a Gaethje, he'll want a war against a big fight payday. You know, Dustin Poirier, he wants one more fight. That's not going to happen. Justin Gaethje, he says he's going to retire soon, so I don't think he's going to fight Benoit Saint Denis. You know, Dustin up until the Benoit Saint Denis fight, guys like Gaethje, Dustin Poirier, like the top M ranked lightweights was notoriously known for not fighting the up and coming contenders.
yeah,
So I think Benoit Saint Denis would be in a position where he could only really get like a Fiziev or a Gamrot, and or a Dariush. But Dariush, I kind of feel like it's on retirement's door. I don't know if Dariush actually wants it anymore. I think he kind of alluded to it in his post fight after his last fight. And I set from Gamrot or Dariush. I think Paddy Pimblett's a far more exciting fight. And I think if whoever wins that fight could become a huge star, do it as England versus France, a European rivalry. I think Saint Denis and Pimblett would get into a fucking dogfight. First of all, I think that would
yeah.
be a really, really good fight. Pimblett has a lot of power. Saint Denis has a lot of power. Um, what intro? I know this is kind of side topic, Dom, but do you think Pimblett, if Saint Denis was to go and beat Moicano, do you think Pimblett could beat a Saint Denis?
I think he could, yeah. I don't think he would, though. I think I would pick Benoit St. Denis to beat Paddy Pimblett, to be honest. I think Benoit St. Denis would finish Paddy Pimblett.
Yeah, I think. See, I kind of think the opposite. I'm sort of sold on, again on the Paddy Pimblett hype. Not that I think he becomes champion, but I do think Paddy Pimblett looked a lot better against Bobby Green in the sense that he his grappling is a real dangerous threat.
Yeah, he's
The way he
elite.
latched up Bobby Green was just unbelievable. I mean, so many people wrote Paddy Pimblett off in that fight. Um, I don't know whether Paddy Pimblett becomes champion, but I think that's a great fight anyway. But on to the core main event. Don, what do you think of that? Who have you got winning that fight?
No, I actually made a mistake and I thought this was a 5 round fight, and it's not. It's 3 rounds, which I I am no. I'm gonna pick Imavov to win. I can see Brendan Allen getting it done. I can see him winning this. The fact it's 3 rounds, so I can.
Yeah, the thing with Brendan Allen is I feel like Brendan Allen's a guy that has all the tools. He's an exceptional grappler in a division full of strikers, really. He's certainly one of the better grapplers in there, maybe Hamzat Chimaev, but Imavov is very capable there too. And I just think on the feet, man, Brendan Allen is just he has just so many holes. And I
He's
think
very
Imavov,
open.
yeah, and Imavov is very clean. I think Imavov's kind of underrated a little bit, Dom.
Yeah, I think a lot of people just kind of overlook him because of that Sean Strickland fight and what happened to him in there. But I don't know. I really, I just see Brendan Allen win this now that I know it's 3 rounds. I don't know. I see him being able to maybe get the Amavos back for one of the rounds and just riding it out. You know, just
Yeah.
winning off having back control. And I don't know. I could see maybe him winning the first and third round. The first round could be pretty competitive on the feet. I think Imavov is a way better striker than what Brendan Allen is. But one thing about Brendan Allen is he's tough and he's game and he will come forward. And it's not as if he's completely. It's not like he's Paul Craig at striking. You know, the guy can strike a bit, but obviously the
Yeah.
grappling is where he really excels. But then again, this is in Paris. Imavov is literally one win away from fighting for the title, in my opinion. Like, look at what he done to Jared Cannonier. Early stoppage or not, that fight was only going one way, and Imavov hurt him, and it was really only a matter of time before he put Jared Cannonier out of there, in my opinion, anyway. There's going to be a fun one. I'm going to go. I'm going to go Imavov decision, but I wouldn't be surprised if Brendan Allen got the job done.
Yeah, I think. Oh God, it's hard. I'm gonna go with Imavov. I do think Imavov will beat Brendan Allen. I think maybe, there's a chance that he gets a little bit overexcited and over aggressive, which can be a
Yeah.
mistake, which will lead to a takedown because he is at Paris. I do think we're going to see a little bit more of an aggressive Imavov, which might open him up. But I think he will overwhelm Brendan Allen on the feet for the most part. He's still a good grappler in his own right. Not that he could out grapple Brendan Allen, but I think he could do enough to keep it on the feet and hold the center of the octagon. Like you said, against Jared Cannonier, he looked unbelievable. Now, part of me does feel like Jared Cannonier, look, he's in his 40s now. He is going to decline at some stage soon, and it looked like it kind of happened in the Imavov fight. He kind of looked really, really slow and sloppy. But at the same time, it's still a great win for Imavov. He looked great, and I think he'll carry this momentum into the Brendan Allen fight. I think he's just more composed than Brendan. He's good everywhere, and I think he's very light on his feet. And I think ultimately he will overwhelm Brendan Allen in this fight. I'm taking Imavov by decision. But yeah, like you said, there is a bit of a or does Brendan Allen just kind of take his back and stall him out at times and gets plenty of control time? I could see that kind of fight happening, but I am going to go with Imavov for this fight.
Here, do you think whoever wins this? I think whoever wins out of Robert Whitaker versus Hamzat is definitely fighting for the belt after Strickland. I think whoever wins this fight, though, could be Adesanya's next opponent.
Honestly, Don, I only think Israel Adesanya. I think Israel Adesanya has two fights left in his career, and I'm just not sure he would fight a Brendan Allen or let's just say Brendan Allen beats Imavov. Does Israel Adesanya, if you're Israel Adesanya, do you see worth in fighting him?
I mean, Adesanya's kind of at that level of his career now where he's at the likes of like, no, he's not as big as Conor McGregor, but he kind of only is ever going to be in big fights, so that kind of contradicts that point. However, Adesanya's that big of a name. He's always one win away from a title shot. And I mean, I think, say Robert Whitaker loses to Hamzat Chimaev or vice versa, I think that's a harder matchup, either Whitaker or Hamzat for Adesanya than what Brendan Allen or Imavov is. And like I said, he is one win away from fighting for the belt again. I think he might. I think he could take this fight. The winner could end up fighting Israel Adesanya unless Baralho gets that matchup. I don't know. I don't know, but I feel like the winner of this could be in for a very high chance of fighting Adesanya next.
I think Baralho versus the winner of this fight would be really, really good. But at the same
Yeah.
time, oh God, Imavov and Allen just aren't in this position where they can call the shot. So I could definitely see a Baralho versus Imavov. Let's say if he wins, and I think that'd be a great fight. Man, the problem is if you're the UFC. Israel Adesanya's at the stage of his career, like you said, where he's a big star. You could make a huge star, let's say, if Imavov was to beat Israel Adesanya.
Yeah,
But
that's the other thing.
the problem is, Israel Adesanya would most likely soundly beat Nasruddin Imavov, in my opinion. And if he was to fight Brendan Allen, don't get me wrong, if Brendan Allen got Israel Adesanya on his back, the fight's over. And I mean quite literally. If Hamzat Chimaev got Israel Adesanya on his back, the fight's over. And quite literally, the fight is definitely over. But I do think Brendan Allen is nowhere near quick enough or a good enough mover to set up a takedown against someone as long as Israel Adesanya. So I think he'd soundly beat Brendan Allen too. Um, but I think it just goes to the point where I think Israel Adesanya will most likely fight the loser of Dricus du Plessis versus Sean Strickland because it's a rematch either way for him. And I think he could also fight the loser of Whittaker versus Hamzat. I think that's a real possibility. And if Dricus and Sean Strickland doesn't get booked in enough time, he could even fight the winner of Whittaker versus Hamzat, especially if it's Hamzat.
Yeah, yeah. I mean that those are completely true. I mean that probably is the more likely route. But if you're Adesanya, Whitaker, Hamzat, Duplessis, Strickland, right? You've beaten Whitaker twice. The second one was a bit ropey. Hamzat Shemaiev's a horrible matchup for you. Sean Strickland's already beat you. Dricus Duplessis already submitted you. You could be looking at Adesanya going, I'm a massive name. I'm one win away from fighting for the title again. Mavov, like you said, I think Adesanya beats him comfortably. I think he beats Brendan Allen comfortably. I'll even be honest, I think Adesanya beats Baralho comfortably as well.
Oh,
Uh,
yeah, without a shadow of a doubt.
yeah, I feel like Adesanya would really expose him on the feet, to be honest. He had a great performance against Jared Cannonier, but I think on the feet, Adesanya would really, really have a field day with him. I think he'd pick him apart. But yeah, maybe Adesanya's looking at this going, out of all these available matchups, guys coming off on win streaks, Brendan Allen and Amavov, those are probably my two most favourable matchups. Let me fight them, and then I'll be able to fight the winner of. Well, I think if Hamzat beats Whitaker, regardless if Adesanya gets a win in the meantime, he will definitely be ahead of Adesanya. But if Whitaker beats Hamzat and say Adesanya goes in there and beats an Amavov or a Brendan Allen, I feel like he would probably jump over Robert Whitaker. That's just my opinion.
Yeah, I can see what you're saying. And I think it will be interesting to see what Israel Adesanya does next because he's in a position where he can't afford another loss. I
Yeah.
think he knows that. I think the world knows that. He needs a win crucially if he wants to get back to getting up there with the title. Man, he looked good against Dricus du Plessis. Came up short but looked good. There's always the Sean Strickland rematch, which I think is destined to happen. I think we'll
Yeah.
definitely see that again without a shadow of a doubt. It's a fight that will sell so well, um, especially as a title fight main event that people know now can be competitive. Whereas last time, I think people just saw it as a wash. We didn't really know how good Sean Strickland was. And he looked really good last time against Israel Adesanya, as we know. But that's UFC Paris. Now, Don, I wanted to bring in one last subject before we get off. Joe Rogan has been talking, and I don't know whether you saw this or not, but Joe Rogan has been talking about Merab Dvalishvili's style. I think we kind of touched up on it on the last podcast, but I wanted to get your opinions on it. Do you think that fighters should have to have a rule enforced there where if they're not active on the ground, if they're not doing any ground and pound, they should be forced to stand up?
I'm guessing this is from the stuff with Herb Dean in his last fight. Is
Yeah.
that where this kind of came from? Right, Herb Dean was a fucking idiot in that fight against Sean O'Malley, to be honest. He kept saying
Yeah.
work, 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 and like they were. I feel like it's hard to really judge when you should stand fighters up because, I mean, like if you've trained a bit of combat sports, uh, it's hard to take someone down, and once you get them down, it's extremely hard to control someone as well, to then be able to get to the point where you can posture up and land shots. It's not as easy as you just take them down, you posture up right away. There's so much more to it. um Again, it's really really hard to understand. It's really really hard to kind of understand when you should stand fighters up. I mean, if they're just lying in your guard and they're not doing anything, like literally just being a wet blanket on you for a certain period of time, I guess you could stand it up. Again, I really don't know. It's really hard to see. You would have to have two separate scenarios in mind to go. You stand them up here, but you don't stand them up here. But in terms of the Merab O'Malley round five, which is where Herb Dean just wouldn't shut his face, yeah, he was just fucking annoying in that fight.
Yeah, look, Joe Rogan, I think made a good. I think sometimes guys like Joe Rogan go overboard with it in the sense that they'll say like, I don't even think you should start the next round on your feet because you
Yeah,
finished the last round on the. Because to me, each round is its own separate fight. It's its own separate sort of fight.
yeah,
That's why, the winner of the fifth round still might not win the fight because they didn't win the earlier rounds. Like, this isn't a street fight, where Don, two guys clash, they go to the ground, not much happens, they get separated, or it's just who they just lie on each other till one gives up or whatever. This is MMA, it's a fight, it's an entertainment business. And look, I think, yeah, it is sort of an advantage for a striker if each round starts on the feet. But at the same time, you know, there's a cage there. It's not on an open field where the striker can just move away endlessly.
yeah.
An octagon cage also massively benefits the grappler. So I thought it's interesting to kind of mention because Joe Rogan sort of mentioned stuff like we should never stand fighters up and stuff like that. And I thought maybe there is a barrier or a line that should be drawn because cage side convos. I don't know whether you know who he is, but he made a good point on TikTok. He kind of said. Well, in jiu-jitsu, and that has no ground and pound at all, you can get penalized for being inactive on the ground.
Yeah, yeah. I
So
mean,
it's like, is there a line that has to be drawn in MMA, or do we think maybe just let them work out the rounds and then next rounds, whatever next round is?
it's just one of those things. I mean, it's one of those ones where you have to kind of figure out how long do you give them. And like, I just keep thinking back to say someone's just in your full guard, say you're on top of someone in their full guard, and you're just lying there for like minutes, not doing anything, not throwing any strikes, not trying to better your position, not trying to posture up, stand them up at that point. But I feel like as soon as you take someone down, you have to give the guy time to work because, like we said, it's hard to get a takedown and it's extremely hard to control your opponent. It's extremely hard to posture up as well to land shots. So I feel like you have to give them time. But like you said, there has to be like a cap. But I feel like it's just one of those things where like when you're watching it, you can be like, right, they've done fuck all here for a minute and a half. Get up, like give them a warning, right? Start to work, like look for shots or better your position, and then if not, stand them up. But it is one of those things where it's like it kind of just is a matter of opinion because some referees will let people just lie there and do nothing, or some
Yeah.
people might, as soon as it hits the mat, go right. You need to start working now, or we're standing you back up. It's kind of just a matter of opinion, really. I think people will be able to understand it by looking at it, by visualizing it. You'll be able to understand watching it to be like, right, he's taking the piss here. He's not even doing anything. He's just lying on him.
Yeah, I agree with you. And I think, like, don't get me wrong, there is a certain point where to me, sometimes I do think at the same time, though, as much as it is an entertainment business, if you get taken down, it's your job to get up.
Yeah,
It's not the other guy's job to let you up. His job was to take you down, and he did. Now you have to get up. If you can't do that, too fucking bad. And I do think Joe Rogan's made a good point there. And like you said, man, it's harder than you think it is when you're like Marab, who's like 5'6", 5'7", against Sean O'Malley, who's like 5'10". He's got really long limbs. He's trying to attack and look for submissions off his back, and you have to be careful of that. You can't just disrespect
yeah,
Sean O'Malley on the ground. There's an element of danger there. But I do think something could be said for maybe Marab, Bilal Muhammad, guys like this looking to aggressively be aggressive on the ground. We saw and have seen styles in the past like Habib Nurmagomedov, who was a very, very aggressive grappler, very aggressive. He wasted. How often did we see Habib Nurmagomedov hold the same position? If Habib Nurmagomedov took you back, you ain't sitting there for 5 minutes. You're going to get fucking choked. You know what I'm trying to say?
yeah,
So for me, I think there is an element to where I think grapplers, and I said this in the last podcast, when they get in close fights like Volk versus Islam 1, you really can't afford to take someone's back and hold them there because as much as it's a dominant position, it is damage-based scoring and you should look to finish them, just as you would look to finish them on the feet. But
yeah.
yeah,
But
it's a weird one
but
because
Volk
if you
but
have
Volk was
if
given the thumbs up though. so like he won.
Pardon?
But Volk was given the thumbs up when his back was taken, so like he won.
Yeah. Yeah,
That's
that was
so
like,
fucking stupid.
I know, but people buy into that.
Yeah,
People think, oh, Volk's fine. He's putting his thumbs up. Islam's doing nothing. So that's why someone like Islam could benefit with trying to maybe flatten him out, trying to land ground and pound, trying to get the hooks in and aggressively look for the choke. As much as it is energy taxing, as much as it is a risk, because Volt could easily. We saw it in the fifth round on when Volt reversed position and started
yeah,
nearly finishing Islam. You know, it is a danger, but for me, I think there is something to be said for Marab maybe just looking more aggressively for the finishing fights.
yeah. I agree with you. I feel like there are some fighters that do kind of take the piss with just relying on ground control to try and coast to a decision. But I do feel like, again, it is all opinion based, really, and you kind of have to visually see it for you to
Yeah.
really be like, yes, no, stuff like that. Just to finish up though quickly, I know we're talking about some of the Joe Rogan stuff. I'm gonna be honest, some of the new rules that Joe Rogan talks about are complete dog shit. I'm just gonna be honest. I like the Joe Rogan Experience, the podcast. I like his commentary at times, but some of them rules like have an open field. It's just terrible. Like, it's just shit in my opinion.
I mean, I wouldn't mind. Oh God, honestly, Don, I wouldn't mind an open field. Um, that's my personal opinion. I think that'd be interesting to see. But at the same time, if it's a grappler versus a striker, how how likely is it that the striker just moves around on the back foot and avoids
Exactly.
takedown the whole fight? But I guess it would kind of make it more fairer for strikers that they can't get pinned up against an object. But in the real world, most of the time anyway, we talk about kind of MMA simulating near a real fight. There is usually something that you will end up backing into. There's usually a wall, there's usually something to trip over. So for me, from an entertainment point of view, the octagon, don't fix it if it's not broken.
Yeah.
It's that simple. It's like when people talk about the scoring. I think sometimes defense should be factored in a little bit more than it is. So, for example, when Marab fought Jose Aldo, I don't think Marab won that fight, to me, in my opinion. Like, I don't see how you can win a fight by someone defending absolutely everything you're doing. You don't land anything significant on the feet. It's just kind of a stalemate. Do you know what I'm trying to say?
Yeah.
Do you get what I'm trying to say with that? Like, I do think I like damage-based scoring in the sense that it factors in what you're doing to them and aggressiveness. But if you just can't get anything off on your opponent, shouldn't that matter in too? Shouldn't that factor in too? I don't know what you think about that.
Yeah, like if you're defending 16, or sorry, say you defend like 14 out of 16 takedowns, it's you should kind of be rewarded in some way for that, because that is tough to do. There should be something involved in that, instead of just looking to be like, oh well, he shot 16 takedowns and he got 14 of them. I feel like you should be rewarded with having great takedown defense and stuff like that, but scoring's just one of those things. It's sometimes you get scorecards that are great, and then sometimes you get people that score the fight to Tai Tuivasa against Jairzinho Rosenstrike, which is just like, what the fuck are you watching at that point? It's
Yeah.
it, it,
But
it
when you
you get that
see
in most things.
But when you see guys like, let's just say you mentioned it in the last podcast, Dan Hooker and Gamrot, I think Gamrot won nearly every exchange they had through
Yeah,
most of the majority of that fight. And he had control time. He took Dan Hooker down. But because Dan Hooker kind of had this sprawl and brawl style of stuffing the takedowns, Gamrot was clearly tired in the fight and he was putting volume on Gamrot because he was looking aggressive and backing Gamrot up. It's almost like people think, oh, Dan Hooker must be winning. Whereas I'm like, but Gamrot might be on the back foot. Dan Hooker might be being more aggressive. But Gamrot was landing on him. He
yeah,
was. Like, people act like Gamrot. Go watch that fight. To anyone that's made it this far in the video, go watch that fight. Look at the exchanges and come back and tell me Dan Hooker won the majority of them because he fucking didn't. Do you know what I'm trying to say?
Yeah,
Like, I
that
just
was a
think
bad one in my opinion. But again, though,
sometimes,
you have to remember, did Gamrot go back to his corner and say, "I love this shit"?
no.
Can't, like, Dan Hooker made himself a fucking TikTok edit right there. Do you know
Yeah,
what I mean?
that's it, man.
So he
Like,
won basically off that.
sometimes it's who's cooler, and sometimes it's
And where you're
who looks
from.
better. Yeah, and where you from? Like, if you look at like Jake Paul against Nate Diaz, Nate Diaz was like he put Jake Paul. I think he put Jake Paul in like a guillotine
Yeah, standing
during the fight,
guillotine, yeah.
and then let him go. And he said, if this was a real fight, I would have won right there. And he just had loads of edits being made about him.
Yeah.
But in reality, he got the fuck beat out of him through nearly every single round.
Yeah. It's like when he fought Leon Edwards, like, oh, but if this was a what is it the say if it's like a schoolyard fight he would have won. No, but he didn't. I
No,
mean
he
the guy
said,
got
he
the
said,
shit kicked out of him
he
for
said,
4 rounds.
people started saying if there was no rounds, if it like was endless, Nate Diaz would eventually win, and it showed in the fifth round. But I'm like, if there was no rounds and it was an endless fight that doesn't go to a decision, do you not think maybe Leon Edwards would have like a massive adrenaline rush, probably just fucking take Nate Diaz straight down and beat the fuck out of him until someone pulls him off him? You know,
And
that
there'd be
that is
no
one.
break.
Nate Diaz is a classic example of what you just mentioned, where it's like he can lose every second of that fight. He can get tripped, he can get taken down, he can get his head cut open. But as soon as he pulls the middle fingers and maybe rocks someone in the later rounds, he won that fight in his mind. And it works every time. People buy into it every single time.
Yeah, and that goes back to the Volkanovski thumbs up thing. But that will do us today for tonight's episode. We will be back again next week with 2 episodes. That's a guarantee. I'm going to say that again for the people in the back.
That is
Guarantee.
a guarantee. That
And
is a
I'm going to
damn
let you in
guarantee.
for a prediction. I'm going to let you in on a wee secret here. Khalil Roundtree KO's Alex Pereira. That's my prediction for next week, but we'll talk about that when it comes. We'll talk about that when it comes. But thanks very much for the support. Comments, what you want us to talk about, stuff like that. And as always, like, share, subscribe, comment, all that good stuff. And we will see you again in the next one.
See you, everyone. Thank you.